All right, so we are back with another case. This is the Dollar Tree Logistics case, and we're going to get into some new material that we've learned from the course. A bit of an overview. We're going to cover cost structure, operation analyzation, solutions, and sensitive analysis for how we will determine if a company like Dollar Tree should utilize different options based off of historical data on um, strategically having distribution centers in certain areas and utilizing resources from one to another compared to comparing things like transportation costs and other input costs needed to compare what the right decision would be. All right, so just a bit of an overview. The Dollar Tree Logistics cost breakdown of their system and business model um, looks like the following. 10% of their cost in their logistics system is inventory carrying, so what they carry in their distribution center. 28% is in the total distribution cost itself, which leads to an easy visual that the total DC, the operational cost of the distribution center, is more than double the cost of the inventory within it. So having a new one is more costly than managing the inventory inside. And then you have the total outbound cost, another large percentage there, and the total outbound. So with that being said, this kind of goes into question one of the case, and I'll get back into the Excel spreadsheet and more things that the instructor requested in the next slides. But for the first question, it asks, discuss the components of the cost structure of the Dollar Tree system as outlined in Exhibit 4, and how do these components behave as the number of DCs in the system change? So for starters, the inbound transportation costs, costs associated with transporting goods from suppliers is one of the components. The others is DC facility costs, outbound transportation costs, and inventory carrying costs. And the details of those is the DC facility cost is the fixed and variable costs that we'll later see in actual analysis and numbers analysis. And these costs are related to operating the distribution centers themselves, including labor, utilities, and maintenance, like I had mentioned previously. Outbound transportation costs includes cost of delivering goods from DCs to stores, and then the carrying costs is cost related to holding the inventory itself. So, how would we go about helping Dollar Tree expand and knowing the information from the case? How do we get there? We use the cost efficiency method, utilization of current resources, and scalability and flexibility. And how that kind of looks is expanding existing distribution centers is cost effective, low risk strategy for Dollar General. They know how it has to be done. Avoids the high capital cost of new construction, leveraging current infrastructure and workforce and things of that nature. And the approach supports operational stability and aligns with internal support and investors of financial discipline, and strengthens reliability for supply chain partners because they already know how this works. So the calculation is listed here on the screen of examples for how they would expand. I picked 20 million, assuming they started in 2005 from the data. You would take the annual operating costs, um, and you would assume the outbound transportation costs, let's say, is 0.25, and then we'd assumed the annual facility costs. The projected annual sales, let's say 400 million units in 2005, growing at 10%. You would take the total logistics cost, which is 1.1 bill inbound, plus the 25 million, plus the 100 million outbound, the 25 million from the DC, um, and you would also add the 0.32 billion for the inventory carrying, equaling out to 1.62 billion, which is just a simple way to calculate expansions. Kind of goes into the other question, which is which of the two DC options for capacity expansion do you recommend? So, in order to answer that question, we must look at the options. Option one's for Briar Creek expansion and the new DC in Hartford. Clearly, the total cost of Hartford in my example is more as far as the facility costs and as far as the outbound transportation costs. You can see that Hartford is also more expensive in this case here for the outbound. And for the actual comparison options, we get a lower cost for option 2, the difference being 6.1 million. So the most cost efficient option, which would be number 2, to answer that specific question. How important is economics of scale for the distribution centers? Economies of scale are crucial for DCs as they help reduce per unit cost by spreading fixed cost over large volumes. And then the sensitive analysis. For me, sensitivity involves the varying of the sales growth and observing the impact of the overall logistics costs. If sales growth slows to 5%, outbound transportation costs would rise more slowly. Whereas if growth is an increase in 10-15% annually, the outbound transportation costs would increase more rapidly. Inventory costs might increase due to higher turnover and potential overstock. But ultimately, the final solution is expanding existing distribution centers helps Dollar Tree manage costs and use current assets efficiently. Specifically for option number 2, that is all of the case. I'll be reading the others, and I will see you all next week.